Here's the first section of your story, crafted to be immersive, suspenseful, and emotionally engaging. Jake was always a good dog. Loyal, affectionate, and predictable in all the ways that made life feel steady. But lately, something had changed. Daniel first noticed it on a Tuesday. It was a little after 2 in the morning when he stirred from sleep, his throat dry. As he padded toward the kitchen for a drink, he glanced at the living room window. The porch light threw dim streaks of gold onto the yard, illuminating the fence. It took him a second to register what was wrong. The gate was open. His stomach tightened. He always locked the gate before bed. Every night, without fail. Then he noticed something else. Jake was gone. A ripple of unease coursed through him as he stepped outside, cold air biting at his skin. The yard was silent, the trees in the distance swaying gently under the moonlight. He called Jake's name, expecting the golden retriever to come bounding back, tail wagging, eyes bright with mischief. Nothing. Minutes passed, his unease growing sharper. But just as he was about to grab a flashlight and search the neighborhood, a rustle from the bushes caught his attention. Jake trotted back into the yard. Relief warred with confusion. "Where the hell were you?" Daniel murmured, crouching down. He expected Jake to leap into his arms, excited and panting. But the dog hesitated, his fur speckled with dirt, his breathing heavy. Something was off. Jake didn't meet his eyes right away, his head swiveling toward the tree line beyond the fence, ears twitching. He sniffed the air, body tense, then, just like that, he relaxed. His tail wagged slowly, but Daniel caught the flicker of something behind his eyes. Something cautious. Daniel checked the gate, finding the latch still locked from the outside. But how had Jake gotten out? That night, sleep didn't come easily. By the time a week passed, the pattern was undeniable. Every night, at exactly 2 a.m., Jake disappeared. No barking, no scratching at the door. Just silence, then an empty yard. Each time, Daniel tried to catch him in the act. He set alarms, waiting by the window, hoping to see how his dog was getting out. But the moment he blinked or turned his head for even a second, Jake would vanish. And every morning, without fail, he came back filthy and exhausted. It wasn't just dirt. Some nights, his golden fur was matted with damp leaves, as if he'd been rolling in the underbrush. Other times, there were scratches along his legs, thin red lines trailing down to his paws. At first, Daniel thought maybe Jake was sneaking into a neighbor's yard. Maybe there was a hole in the fence he hadn't noticed. But then the neighbors started talking. "Your dog ever bark at night?" Mrs. Hawthorne, the elderly woman next door, asked him one afternoon, her voice edged with something that sounded like worry. Daniel hesitated. "No." "Why?" The old woman narrowed her eyes at the woods beyond their street. "Because I keep hearing something," she muttered. "Around 2 or 3 in the morning. A low, whining sound. Like a dog crying." Daniel's skin prickled. "You sure it's Jake?" Mrs. Hawthorne shook her head. "No. But if it's not, then what else is out there?" That was the first time Daniel considered something bigger was happening. The hidden camera was his next move. He spent an hour setting it up, positioning it carefully in the backyard. It had night vision, motion sensors, everything he needed to finally catch Jake slipping away. That night, he sat in bed, phone in hand, watching the live feed. The camera's soft green glow bathed the yard in an eerie light. At exactly 2 a.m., Jake appeared on the screen. Daniel's heart pounded. He watched as his dog stood perfectly still, ears perked, staring toward the fence. He wasn't pacing or sniffing around like a dog getting ready to dig. He was waiting. For what? Then, without hesitation, Jake moved toward the far corner of the yard, where the grass was thick and overgrown. He pawed at the earth, quickly uncovering a hole. Not a new hole, but one he'd already dug, hidden beneath the grass. Daniel's pulse quickened. Within seconds, Jake squeezed through the narrow opening and disappeared into the night. Daniel bolted out of bed. He didn't even stop for a jacket. The cold air hit him like a slap as he ran outside, flashlight bouncing in his grip. He reached the fence, scanning the yard, but Jake was already gone. The woods loomed ahead, their darkness stretching endlessly. He took a step forward. Then another. A soft rustling sound made him freeze. Something was in the trees. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He swung the flashlight beam across the branches, the cold night air thick with silence. His pulse pounded in his ears. The leaves trembled, shifting as if something had just moved deeper into the woods. Then, a low, guttural growl. Not Jake's. Something else. Daniel stumbled backward, his foot catching on a rock. He hit the ground hard, the flashlight tumbling from his hand. He scrambled to grab it, his fingers slick with sweat. Silence. Then, a shadow moved between the trees. His chest constricted. He aimed the flashlight, but there was nothing there. Just the endless stretch of darkness beyond his fence. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the night was still again. Minutes passed. Then, rustling. Fast, urgent. Jake burst through the trees, his body low to the ground, moving fast like he was being chased. Daniel didn't wait. He stumbled to his feet and ran back toward the house, Jake right beside him. When he slammed the door shut, his hands were shaking. Jake stood at the window, staring out at the woods, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Daniel followed his gaze. The flashlight still lay outside where he had dropped it. He wasn't going back for it. Not tonight. And maybe not ever. The next morning, Daniel retrieved the flashlight from the yard. The battery had drained completely, though he swore he had just replaced it. The air still felt heavy, like something unseen lingered in the shadows of the trees. Jake was restless. Normally, he would lounge by the kitchen door, waiting for breakfast, but today, he paced near the window, eyes locked on the woods. Daniel knelt beside him. "What is it, boy?" Jake didn't look away. He let out a slow, low whine, his tail stiff. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He grabbed his laptop and pulled up the footage from the hidden camera. His stomach twisted as he fast-forwarded to 2 a.m. The grainy green glow of the night vision flickered as Jake appeared on the screen. As before, he stood still, staring at the fence. But this time, he wasn't alone. Daniel's pulse spiked. A figure stood at the edge of the woods. It was tall and unmoving, its form barely distinguishable from the darkness behind it. The longer Daniel stared, the more he realized, it wasn't just standing there. It was watching, The footage jumped. A few seconds of static, then Jake was gone. The figure too. A shuddering breath escaped Daniel's lips. His hands trembled as he scrubbed back and forth on the timeline, trying to understand how an entire dog, and a full-grown person, had vanished from view in an instant. The distortion in the video wasn't normal. The figure didn't make sense. And worst of all, Jake had been going toward it. Daniel turned to his dog, still sitting by the window, ears twitching. "What are you running to every night?" he whispered. Jake didn't turn. That evening, Daniel took a different approach. He went to see Mrs. Hawthorne. The elderly woman had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone. She knew its history, its strange occurrences, and its forgotten stories. When she answered the door, her sharp blue eyes studied him carefully. "You look pale, dear." Daniel forced a breath. "It's about the woods." She pursed her lips, stepping aside to let him in. Over steaming cups of tea, he told her everything, the disappearances, the camera footage, the shadow in the trees. Mrs. Hawthorne listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. But when he finished, she sighed. "You should have come to me sooner." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She gazed out her window, toward the forest's edge. "Something has always been wrong with those woods." He waited, his heartbeat quickening. "When I was a girl, a boy named Elias Grayson lived in a cabin just beyond the treeline," she said. "His family was reclusive. People whispered about them. About how children who wandered too far into the woods never came back. Daniel swallowed. You think Elias had something to do with it? No one could prove it. She ran a hand along the rim of her teacup. But when Elias grew older, he disappeared too. No one knows what happened to him. His cabin rotted away, and the forest swallowed what was left. A chill crept up Daniel's spine. But I've seen things, Daniel. At night, her voice dropped. Shapes moving between the trees. Flickers of light where no light should be. And now, you tell me your dog is going out there, like he's following something? She shook her head. Jake knows more than you do. Daniel sat in stunned silence. Mrs. Hawthorne placed a gentle hand over his. If I were you, I wouldn't follow him. But Daniel had already made up his mind. That night, he set out after Jake. Dressed in dark clothes, he waited by the back door, a flashlight strapped to his wrist and his phone ready to record. 2 a.m. Right on time, Jake stirred. He padded silently across the room, nosing at the back door. Daniel's heart pounded as he followed the dog outside, careful not to make a sound. Jake didn't hesitate. He trotted straight to the hole in the fence, slipping through with practiced ease. Daniel crawled after him, barely squeezing through before the dog disappeared into the underbrush. The forest was colder than he expected. The trees loomed overhead, their branches whispering in the wind. Moonlight barely filtered through the canopy, casting warped shadows along the forest floor. Jake moved with certainty, weaving through the darkness. Daniel followed, his breath shallow. The deeper they went, the more Daniel noticed something was wrong with the air. It was thick, charged, like the moment before a storm. His skin prickled. Then, a sound. A distant, faint whimper. Daniel stopped. His flashlight trembled in his grip. Jake let out a soft whine. Another whimper, closer this time. It didn't sound like an animal. Daniel's throat tightened. He moved forward slowly, the leaves crunching beneath his feet. The trees parted ahead, revealing a small clearing. And in the center of it, a hole in the ground. It was deep and wide, as if something had been dug up or buried. Jake crept forward, ears flat, sniffing the edge. He whimpered again. Daniel stepped closer, dread curling in his gut. The flashlight beam trembled over the hole. The dirt was loose, recently disturbed. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then, a snap of a branch behind him. Daniel spun, light slicing through the trees. Nothing. The forest was still. But he knew something was watching. A chill raced down his spine. He turned back to Jake. But the dog was staring behind him. Not at Daniel. At something just over his shoulder. Daniel's breath seized. His skin prickled, a raw, instinctive terror locking his limbs in place. He didn't want to turn around. He shouldn't turn around. But he did. And the last thing he saw before the flashlight flickered out was a pair of eyes, staring at him from the darkness. And then, the light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. He stumbled back, his breath coming in sharp gasps. His flashlight, dead, His phone, useless, the screen stuck in a frozen, flickering state. Jake let out a low, guttural growl, his body rigid beside Daniel. He wasn't growling at the hole. He was growling at whatever stood behind them. Daniel didn't move. He couldn't. The air around him had shifted, thick and unnatural, pressing against his skin like invisible hands. The eyes in the darkness didn't blink. They were human, almost but something was wrong. They were too wide, too still, glinting faintly in the slivers of moonlight that cut through the trees. Then, they moved. Daniel lurched backward as the figure stepped forward. It wasn't walking. It glided, a slow, unnatural movement that made Daniel's stomach twist. The shape was tall, its features obscured by the shadows, but he could see a mouth. A grin, wide, stretching too far, too unnatural. Asterisk asterisk. Jake barked, snapping the moment like shattering glass. He lunged, teeth bared, but the figure didn't flinch. Daniel grabbed for Jake's collar, his fingers barely closing around it before the thing disappeared. No sound. No movement. Just gone. The forest was silent again, the oppressive weight in the air lifting as if it had never been there. Daniel exhaled sharply, his body trembling. His breath curled in the cold, fogging in front of him. Jake whined, nudging against his leg. Daniel swallowed hard. He had to move. Now. With one last glance at the empty space where the figure had stood, he turned and ran. Branches whipped at his face as he crashed through the underbrush, Jake sprinting beside him. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to get out. The trees blurred past. The distant glow of his house flickered through the gaps in the woods, asterisk asterisk almost there. Asterisk asterisk. Then, asterisk asterisk a sound. Asterisk asterisk. Not behind him. Below. A whispering, scraping sound. Daniel skidded to a halt. His stomach lurched as he looked down. The ground was shifting. Dirt trembled beneath his feet, rippling outward like something was moving underneath it. Jake barked frantically, circling him, paws scratching at the earth. The sound grew louder, closer, until a hand burst through the soil. Daniel barely had time to scream before it grabbed his ankle. Cold. Brittle. Too many fingers. Panic surged through him. He kicked wildly, breaking free just as another hand emerged beside the first. Then another, asterisk asterisk and another. Asterisk asterisk. Hands clawing up from the dirt, twisting, reaching for him. Daniel staggered back, nearly falling as the hole in the ground yawned wider. A low moaning sound drifted up from beneath, not human, not animal, something older. Then, asterisk asterisk whispers. Asterisk asterisk. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but they slithered through his skull like writhing insects, pressing into his thoughts, filling the space behind his eyes. Jake barked sharply, snapping Daniel out of his trance. He turned and ran. Faster than before. Faster than he ever had in his life. He burst through the fence, nearly tripping over the broken boards. Scrambling up the porch steps, he threw open the door, yanking Jake inside before slamming it shut. Silence. His lungs burned. His heart hammered. Jake stood beside him, chest heaving, ears flattened. His golden fur was bristled, his body stiff with lingering terror. Daniel pressed his back against the door, struggling to catch his breath. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. Through the window, the forest loomed. Dark. Silent. Waiting. But Daniel knew better now. It wasn't empty. Something was out there. Something that had been waiting. And now, it knew his name. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the floor with his back against the door, his knees pulled to his chest, Jake curled beside him, his breathing shallow and uneasy. The house was silent, but outside, the night pressed against the walls like a living thing. Every creak of the floorboards made Daniel's heart lurch. Every shift of the wind sent his pulse hammering. He kept the flashlight gripped in his hands, though he wasn't sure what good it would do. The batteries had died out in the woods, and even now they refused to work. Whatever had been out there, asterisk asterisk whatever had touched him asterisk asterisk, had drained the light from everything. The whispers still echoed in his head, like tendrils of a dream he couldn't shake. He didn't know what they had been saying, but he felt the meaning behind them. A warning. Or a call. Jake stirred beside him, his head snapping up suddenly. His ears twitched. His gaze locked on the window. Daniel's blood ran cold. The air changed. A pressure settled over the room, thick and suffocating. The silence stretched too long, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then, knock. A single, deliberate knock at the front door. Daniel's skin prickled. Jake let out a low growl, his hackles rising. The knock came again. Slow. Measured. Daniel forced himself to move. He rose shakily, inching toward the door. His fingers hovered over the peephole. He didn't want to look. But he had to. Heart pounding, he pressed his eye to the tiny glass. Outside. Nothing. The porch was empty. The yard was empty. The forest stood still in the distance, nothing but shadows and silence. But the moment Daniel exhaled, another knock. This time, *** from the back door. ***. Jake barked, spinning toward the kitchen. Daniel stumbled back, his stomach twisting. It was toying with him. The thing in the woods. The thing that had touched him. It wasn't done. The whispers returned, crawling under his skin, seeping into his bones. The words weren't in any language he knew, but somehow, he understood. Come back. Come see. The floor beneath him groaned. The lights flickered. The air was so heavy now, he could barely breathe. And then, the doorknob turned. Not the front door. The back door. Daniel's stomach dropped. The knob rattled, slow at first, then violently. Jake was barking wildly now, his body low to the ground, every muscle tense. Daniel staggered back, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, ready to fight, ready to. The door slammed open. Wind rushed in, whipping through the house, carrying the scent of damp earth and rot. The whispers surged, deafening, twisting inside his skull. And then, Jake bolted. Straight through the open door. Jake. No. Daniel lunged after him, but it was too late. The dog was already outside, disappearing into the black void of the forest. Panic ignited in Daniel's chest. He didn't think. He ran. The woods swallowed him whole. Cold air wrapped around him, thick as smoke. His flashlight flickered weakly in his grip, barely illuminating the gnarled trees ahead. Jake. Daniel's voice was raw, desperate. A rustling in the distance. A low whimper. He turned sharply, his heart leaping into his throat. There, *** movement. ***. Through the trees, past the place where the earth had opened up. Jake stood still. Too still. Daniel stumbled closer, his breath catching. Jake. Then he saw them. The eyes. Not just two this time. Dozens. They flickered in the darkness, surrounding Jake, watching Daniel. Figures shifted in the trees. Some tall, some bent and twisted, their bodies half-formed, like they had been dragged from another place, another time. Jake let out a sharp, desperate whine. Daniel moved, but something held him back. The air changed again. The whispers grew. ***, no, not whispers. ***. Voices. And now, he understood. Not a warning. Not a call. A choice. Daniel's breath trembled. The figures pressed closer. The eyes bore into him, waiting. They hadn't taken Jake. Jake had gone to them. The dog who had run away every night. The dog who had always known more than Daniel. Because Jake had seen them first. Daniel's knees weakened. His fingers twitched. Something moved behind him. A hand, just at the edge of his vision. Reaching. The whispers coiled around his mind. The choice was his. But deep down, he already knew. Some things, once seen, never let go. And the next time the dog ran away, Daniel might follow.